Elias stood in the supermarket checkout line when a single mother with her baby in her arms spoke the words that would mark him forever. "I promise to pay when I can." What happened after that moment transformed not only his destiny, but that of an entire family too. Discover how a simple act of kindness can change lives. Stay until the end and get ready to be moved by this inspiring story. Elias walked through the supermarket aisles with a familiar nostalgia. That store in Logan Square, Chicago, was the same one his mother used to take him to as a child, when she still held his little hand in hers and let him choose an ice cream. If he behaved well now at 45, he would return every so often just to feel the connection to the past, to the days when everything was much simpler. The afternoon was falling gently over the city, and Elias carried only a carton of milk and some fruit in his hands. He didn't need anything else. He lived alone in a large, silent house in the Gold Coast where the echo of his footsteps resonated in empty rooms. But that day, as he entered the checkout line, his routine was about to be broken in a way he would never have imagined. In front of him, a young woman held a small child on her left hip, while with her right hand she emptied the last coins from her purse onto the counter. Elias noticed her trembling fingers, the nervous gesture with which she counted the few coins she had. Again and again the cashier waited patiently. But there was a line of customers behind them who were starting to murmur impatiently. The child, who must have been no more than 4 years old, looked with huge eyes at the candies hanging near the register, but asked for nothing. Just watched. Elias caught that detail. Little Liam already knew he shouldn't ask. The woman lifted her gaze to the cashier and her voice came out firm, despite the shame she was trying to hide. "How much is left?" she asked with a thread of hope. The cashier checked the total and replied gently, "That's another 15, ma'am." The woman's face contracted for a second, as if something inside her had silently broken. She took a can of beans and a bag of rice from the cart, carefully putting them back. "I won't be taking these," she murmured softly, almost as if talking to herself. Then she took a deep breath, looked to the cashier straight in the eye, and said with a dignity that shot through Elias's chest like lightning, "I promise to pay when I can." It wasn't a plea, nor an excuse. It was a statement of intent. A promise made with the weight of someone who still believes in her own word, even though the world has beaten her down 1,000 times. Elias felt something stir within him, something that had been dormant for years. Without a second thought, he stepped forward and placed his hand on the counter. "I'll pay for everything," he said calmly, pulling out his wallet. The woman turned to him wide-eyed with surprise. "No, sir, I can't accept," she began to say, but Elias had already handed the bills to the cashier. "It's paid for," he replied with a quiet smile, without theatrics or grand gestures, just a simple act from human to human. The woman stood frozen for a moment, hugging little Liam, who was looking at the stranger. "Curiosity tighter. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking with the emotion she was trying to hold back. Elias shook his head. "No need to thank me for anything. Just take good care of your son," he said, gesturing to the child who was now smiling shyly. Both left the supermarket at almost the same time, and Elias thought that this would be the end of the story, a small gesture of kindness lost to the afternoon breeze. But fate had other plans already. In the parking lot, as Elias walked towards his car, he heard a voice behind him. "Sir, wait, please." It was her, struggling to carry the child and the shopping bags, almost stumbling over her own steps. Elias stopped and turned around. The woman reached him, breathless, her cheeks flushed from the running and the embarrassment. "I'm sorry to bother you again," she said, panting. "It's just that I don't even have money for the bus fare to get home." Her eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall because she still had a little pride left. Elias watched her in silence for a second, seeing not just a woman in difficulty, but someone fighting with all her might to keep her head high. The child looked at him with those big, trusting eyes, as if he knew this man could help them. And Elias understood that this afternoon was destined to change his life forever. "Get in, I'll give you a ride," Elias said, opening the back door of his Silver. The woman hesitated only for a moment before accepting, as if calculating whether she could trust this stranger who had just shown her more kindness than she had received in months. She got in, carefully settling little Liam in her arms and placing the shopping bags next to her. Elias started the engine and waited for her to indicate the direction. "I live in the Inglewood neighborhood near the Municipal," she murmured with her gaze lowered, as if ashamed to admit she lived in one of Chicago's most humble areas. He nodded without comment, putting the car in motion. Silence filled the vehicle for the first few minutes, interrupted only by the soft purr of the engine and an occasional murmur from the child. Elias looked at the road while she looked out the window, each lost in their own thoughts. It was Elias who broke the silence. "What's your son's name?" he asked with genuine curiosity, looking at her in the rearview mirror. She looked up, surprised by the question. "Liam," she replied with a small, sincere smile, stroking the child's head. "He just turned 4, Elias smiled. "He's a very calm child. He behaved well in the supermarket." She nodded, a glow of maternal pride in her eyes. "Yes, he's very good, sometimes too good for his age." There was something in the way she said that made Elias sense a hidden burden behind those words. The ride continued through Chicago's increasingly narrow and modest streets, the large houses and wide avenues of the Gold Coast give way to simpler constructions, faded facades, and streets full of local life. Elias noticed how she became increasingly nervous, wringing her hands in her lap. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. She took a deep breath as if making a difficult decision. "Sir, I need to explain something," she began, her voice trembling. "I don't want you to think I'm an opportunist or irresponsible." Elias looked at her in the rearview mirror with complete attention. "I don't think that at all," he assured her firmly. She swallowed hard and continued. "The money I had was my entire salary for this week. I worked cleaning private homes and received my pay this morning." The words now came out more fluently, as if she needed to confess everything. "But last night Liam started with a very high fever, and early this morning I had to take him to the emergency room. The doctor said he had a throat infection," she continued, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. "The consultation and the medicine cost me almost everything I had. I only had enough left to buy little food, but even that wasn't enough." Her voice broke on the last sentence. Elias felt his chest tightened with every word he heard. He, who had lived so many years surrounded by luxury and comforts, had never faced the anguish of choosing between a child's health and a week's worth of food and the child's father. He dared to ask. Although he feared the answer, she gave a bitter laugh. "He left when he found out I was pregnant. He said he wasn't ready to be a father and that I should manage on my own." She wiped her tears with the back of her hand while Liam, noticing his mother's crying, touched her cheek with childish tenderness. "Don't cry, Mommy," the little one said with his sweet voice. Those simple words pierced Elias's heart. They finally arrived at a narrow street where houses clustered close together with humble yet dignified facades. "It's here," she indicated, pointing to a small faded blue cement building. Elias stopped the car. She got out, carefully carrying the child and the shopping bags before closing. She turned to him with determination in her teary eyes. "Sir, could you give me your phone number?" she asked in a steady voice. Elias looked at her surprised. "As soon as I get my next paycheck, I swear I'll pay back every last cent," she assured him with a conviction that allowed no doubt. He took a business card from his wallet and handed it to her. "Not necessary," he said gently, but she held the card as if it were a treasure. "It is necessary to me," she replied, looking him straight in the eyes. "My name is Sophia, and I always keep my promises." Having said that, she turned and entered the house with Liam in her arms. Elias sat in his SUV watching the blue door close, and in that moment, he knew that Sophia had left a mark on his soul that he could no longer erase. Elias arrived home when the sun had completely set behind the skyscrapers that surrounded Chicago, the enormous residence in the Gold. Host neighborhood greeted him with the same silence as always, that emptiness he had grown accustomed to filling with work and meaningless routine. He left the keys on the marble table at the entrance and went straight to the kitchen, where he prepared a coffee. He probably wouldn't finish drinking, but that night was different. That night he couldn't stop thinking about Sophia's. The way she had pronounced her promise with such dignity. Liam's small hands touching his mother's cheek to console her. He tried turning on the television, checking work emails, doing anything to distract his mind. Nothing worked. The image of that single mother struggling to survive was etched into his memory like a photograph he couldn't erase. He sat on the enormous living room sofa and let out a deep sigh. Why had that woman affected him so much? Elias had helped many people throughout his life. He had donated money to charities, given generous tips, been kind when the situation demanded it. But this was different. There was something about Sophia that awakened an emotion he thought had been dead and buried for years. Maybe it was her strength disguised as fragility, or perhaps the way she loved her son with a devotion he had never experienced. He got up from the sofa and walked to the window overlooking the backyard, where automatic lights illuminated a perfectly manicured green space that no one used. Then he remembered Liam's words, "Don't cry, Mommy." The voice of that small child comforting. His mother had broken through something inside him. Elias closed his eyes, and involuntarily the ghosts of his past began to emerge from the dark corners of his memory. He knew exactly why Sophia had moved him so much. 10 years earlier, Elias had been married to Vanessa, a beautiful and ambitious woman he had met at a business conference. Their courtship was fast, intense, full of promises and plans for the future. They married in an elegant ceremony in downtown Chicago, surrounded by friends and family who celebrated what seemed to be a love destined to last forever. During the first 2 years of marriage, everything seemed perfect. They lived well, traveled constantly, enjoying the life that Elias's money could afford. But then came the moment when Vanessa started talking about having children. "You want to be a mother," she would say, often looking tenderly at the babies they saw in restaurants or parks. Elias also wanted that. He had always imagined that one day he would have a family, children who would fill that enormous house with laughter and life. But the months passed and pregnancy never came. After a year of trying, they decided to undergo medical exams to understand what was happening. The day he received the results was the day his life changed forever. Elias remembered every detail of that afternoon as if it had happened yesterday. He was sitting in the doctor's office with Vanessa by his side, expecting to hear that everything was fine and that it was just a matter of time, but the doctor opened the folder with his exams and spoke the words that would shatter his world. "Elias, the results indicate that you have azoospermia. It's a condition where no sperm are produced. I'm afraid you won't be able to have biological children." The silence that followed was deafening. Elias. While the ground disappeared beneath his feet, he looked at Vanessa, searching for comfort in her eyes, some word of support or unconditional love. But what he saw destroyed him even more. There was disappointment in her look, a sudden coldness he had never perceived before. "There are options," the doctor continued with a sympathetic tone. "Adoption, fertilization, the donor's alternative treatments." But Elias barely heard him. He could only see the expression on his wife's face, who no longer looked at him the same way. The following months were a slow, painful nightmare. Vanessa emotionally distanced herself, turning their marriage into a cold, meaningless coexistence. They stopped sleeping together, stopped talking about anything important, stopped being the couple they had been. Elias tried to save the relationship, proposed adoption, suggested treatments, and pleaded with her not to leave him. But one night, as they were dining in silence, Vanessa put her silverware down on the table and spoke the words that would mark him forever. "I can't continue like this, Elias. I want to be a real mother, to have my own children. I can't live my whole life without experiencing that." She left 3 days later, taking her belongings and leaving only a divorce petition on the dining room table. Elias was left alone in that huge house, feeling that he had lost not only his wife, but also the possibility of ever having a family. He closed his heart from then on, convinced that no woman would love him, knowing he couldn't give her children until that afternoon. Sophia and Liam showed him that perhaps love had nothing to do with blood, but with something much deeper. The weeks passed slowly and quickly. At the same time, Elias tried to continue with his usual routine business meetings, supervising his real estate investments, lonely lunches, and expensive restaurants where the service was impeccable, but the company non-existent. However, no matter how much he tried to focus on work, Sophia's image would appear at the most unexpected moments when signing a contract. He remembered her trembling hands counting coins when driving through the streets of Chicago. He would unconsciously look for SUVs similar to the one he had driven her home in. He kept the business card she had given him in his wallet and took it out more than once just to confirm that the encounter had been real and not a strange dream. His partners noticed his distraction during meetings. "Are you all right, Elias?" his friend Ricardo asked during a business lunch. "I've been seeing you. With your head in the clouds lately?" He just smiled and changed the subject because how could he explain that a woman he had met for a few minutes had revolutionized his entire inner world? It was a Wednesday afternoon when his cell phone rang with an unknown number. Elias was in his office reviewing the plans for a new real estate venture when he saw the screen light up. He hesitated for a second before answering, thinking it was probably some persistent salesman or a wrong number. but something inside him prompted him to pick up. "Hello," he said in a professional tone. On the other end of the line, he heard a feminine voice, nervous but determined. "Mr. Elias, it's Sophia. We met 3 weeks ago at the supermarket." Elias's heart skipped a beat in his chest. He immediately straightened up in his chair, letting the plans fall onto the desk. "Sophia, of course I remember," he replied, trying to sound calm, though his pulse had quickened. "How are you? How is Liam?" There was a slight pause before she answered. "We're fine. Thank goodness Liam is completely recovered from the..." Elias felt genuine relief hearing this. "I'm very happy to hear that," he said sincerely. "Mr. Elias, I'm calling because I've received my pay for this week." Sophia continued, her voice firmer. "I've gathered the money you spent at the supermarket and I want to return it." Elias closed his eyes for a moment, moved once again. "For the integrity of that woman, Sophia, it really isn't necessary," he began to say, but she interrupted him gently. "It is to me, sir. I made a promise, and promises are kept. That show my mother, rest in peace, taught me." There was a pride in her voice that Elias deeply respected. He understood that, insisting she shouldn't. They would be taking away that dignity she defended so fiercely. "All right," he finally accepted. "Where would you like us to meet?" Sophia seemed relieved that he had accepted. "Do you know the Café Bluebird near the municipal market?" she asked timidly. "It's a simple place, but they make delicious coffee and it's close to my house." Elias smiled. "Perfect. 4:00 p.m. Tomorrow works. I'll be there," she confirmed. "Thank you for understanding, Mr. Elias." They hung up, and Elias stood looking at his phone with a smile he couldn't hold back. The next day, Elias arrived at the Café Bluebird 15 minutes before the agreed time. The place was exactly as Sophia had described. Simple, clean, with wooden tables worn by the years and a warm neighborhood atmosphere. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mixed with the smell of pastries resting in a display case next to the counter. Elias ordered a coffee and sat at a table near the window from where he could watch the street. He observed people passing by St. vendors, children leaving school, women carrying market bags. It was a world completely different from his own. For some reason, he felt more alive there than in any elegant restaurant downtown. Minutes past 4 p.m., he saw Sophia approaching on the sidewalk. She wore a simple navy blue dress, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and on her face was an expression of determination mixed with nervousness. Elias stood up as she entered the cafe. Their eyes met and they both smiled, the mixture of joy and shyness that surprised Elias. "You're punctual," he said, gesturing to the chair in front of him. "Punctuality is respect," she replied, sitting down carefully. Sophia took a carefully sealed white envelope from her purse and placed it on the table. "Here's all the money, Mr. Elias. I counted it 3 times. To be sure nothing was missing." Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed the envelope toward him. Elias took it but didn't open it. He simply put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. "I knew you would keep your word," he said, looking her straight in the eye. "But not because I needed the money, but because I can see the kind of person you are." Sophia lowered her gaze, blushing lightly. "It's just the right thing to do," she murmured. Elias ordered 2 coffees and a plate of pastries to share. For the next hour, they talked as if they were old friends, reuniting after a long time. Sophia talked about her house cleaning job, about how Liam would start kindergarten the following year, about her dreams. Someday being able to rent a better place to live. Elias listened, fascinated not by extraordinary stories, but by the beauty and the simplicity of her life. And as he heard her smile while talking about her son, he understood something that filled him with hope and terror at the same time. This was no longer just a meeting to return money. This was the beginning of something that could change both of their lives. After that meeting at Café Bluebird, Elias found the perfect excuse to see Sophia again. He sent a text message 2 days later asking if she would like to take Liam to Wicker Park the following Sunday. "It's been a while since I've been," he wrote, trying to sound casual, "and I thought the child might like to see the gardens." On the playgrounds, it took Sophia nearly an hour to reply, and Elias checked his phone every 5 minutes. With an anxiety he hadn't felt since adolescence, the answer finally arrived. "Liam would love that. He's never been to that park. Thank you for the invitation." That simple message filled Elias with an inexplicable joy. Monday arrived with a clear sky and the bright sunshine typical of Chicago. Elias went to pick up Sophia and Liam at home, and the little one couldn't contain his excitement getting into the SUV. "We're going to the park. We're going to the park," he repeated, doing little jumps in the back seat. Sophia gently reprimanded him, asking him to behave. But Elias was laughed. It had been so long since he had heard children's laughter in his car. Lincoln Park was full of families enjoying Sunday. Children running among the trees, couples strolling hand in hand, balloon and cotton candy vendors filling the air with color and sweetness. Elias bought ice cream for the three of them, and they walked the paths while Liam pointed everything out with wonder. "Look, Mommy, a puppy. Look, there are ducks in the pond." Every small discovery by the child was celebrated as if it were the most marvelous thing in the world. Elias watched Sophia interact with her son, the way she bent down to his level to explain things, the way she hugged him when Liam ran towards her excited. There was a beauty in that simplicity that all the luxury in the world. Even by after a while, they found a playground area where Liam immediately launched himself towards the swings. Pushed me," he shouted excitedly. Elias walked over and began to push him gently, listening to the little boy's giggles that resonated like music in his ears. Sophia watched them from a nearby bench with a smile that lit up her entire face. When Liam got tired of the swings, he ran to Asmal sandbox area where other children were building castles. Elias and Sophia sat together on the bench watching him play. "I've never seen him so happy," Sophia confessed in a soft voice. "We usually only play in the yard or on the street, but I never have the time or money to bring him to places like this." Elias felt a pang in his chest. "Then we can come more often," he suggested cautiously, not wanting to pressure her. She looked at him with those dark eyes, full of gratitude and something more that Elias didn't yet dare to interpret. "I don't want to take advantage of your kindness, Elias," she said, using his first name for the first time, without the Mr. in front. He smiled at the change. "It's not taking advantage. The truth is, I'm having fun too." And it was true. For the first time in years, Elias felt genuinely happy. Not the superficial happiness that comes from success or money, but something deep and real that filled a void he hadn't even known. We had Sophia return the smile, and their hands resting on the bench almost touched. Sundays in the park became a tradition. After Lincoln Park, Elias took them to the shed aquarium where Liam was fascinated seeing the colorful fish. Another time they went to the Museum of Science and Industry where the little boy excitedly ran between the interactive exhibits. But it wasn't just weekend outings. Elias began to show up at the Cafe Bluebird during the week, right around the time Sophia finished her work shift. They would have coffee together while Liam did his kindergarten tasks at a nearby table, drawing with the crayons Elias had given him. Their conversations flowed more naturally all the time. Sophia talked about the family she worked for some. Others, not Elias, also talked about his work, but avoided mentioning the real magnitude of his fortune, fearing it would change the way she saw him. He wanted her to know him for who he was, not for what he had. And little by little, without either of them explicitly mentioning it, they realized this was no longer just friendship one afternoon. As they were walking through Daly Plaza after buying donuts for Liam, the child let go of his mother's hand and grabbed Elias's with complete naturalness. "Pick me up, my feet hurt," he asked with that confidence only children have. Elias lifted him without hesitation. Feeling the small warm weight of the child against his chest, Liam rested his head on Elias's, older, and sighed contentedly. "You smell nice like my grandpa," the little one murmured, his eyes already halfway closed with sleep. Sophia watched them, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Liam never knew his grandpa," she explained, her voice choked. "My father died before he was born." Elias felt something break underbuild. Inside his chest at the same time, for years he had believed he would never have the opportunity to feel what it meant to carry a child who trusted him, who sought him for comfort. And now, with Liam asleep in his arms and Sophia walking by his side, Elias understood something fundamental. Perhaps fate hadn't taken away his chance to be a father. It had simply shown him a different path. It was 2 a.m. when Elias's phone rang, jarring him from a deep sleep. He blinked confusedly in the darkness of his room, trying to orient himself. The cell phone continued to vibrate insistently on the nightstand. He grabbed the device and saw Sophia's name on the screen. His heart immediately sped up because he knew no one calls at that hour with good news. "Sophia, what happened?" he answered in a worried voice, already sitting up in bed. On the other end, he heard choked sobs, the ragged breath of someone in the midst of a crisis. "Elias, forgive me for calling so late." "It's Liam, I don't know what to do." The words came out amidst desperate cries. Elias got up immediately. fumbling for his clothes with one hand while holding the phone with the other. "Calm down, Sophia. Take a deep breath and tell me what's going on." He heard her trying to control herself, gasping for air with difficulty. "He has a very high fever, Elias. He's coughing horribly and having trouble breathing. I'm scared, so scared." Her voice completely broke on the last sentence. "Where are you?" Elias asked, now fully dressed and looking for his SUV keys. "At my house, but I think I need to take him to the hospital." "Don't move. I'll be there right now and take you both," Elias ordered firmly as he ran out the door. "But Elias, it's too far and it's so late." Sophia weakly tried to protest. "It doesn't matter. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He cut her off, already leaving the house. Elias drove through the empty streets of Chicago like he never had before. The illuminated avenues of downtown gave way to the darker streets of the Englewood neighborhood. His mind raced at full speed, imagining scenarios, recalling nearby hospitals, calculating times. He reached Sophia's house in 18 minutes, knocking on the door urgently. She opened it immediately, with Liam in her arms wrapped in a blanket. The child was pale, sweaty, with glassy eyes and shallow breathing. "Let's go," Elias said. Wasting no time guiding them quickly to his SUV, Sophia got in the back with Liam curled against her chest, murmuring words of comfort that the little boy barely seemed to hear. "It's okay, my love. We're going to the hospital. Everything will be fine." But her voice trembled with fear. Elias speeded toward Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the closest one with a pediatric emergency room. The drive felt like an eternity, compressed into 15 minutes. Elias constantly looked in the rearview mirror, seeing Sophia embrace her son, while silent tears streamed down her cheeks. "Hold on, champ," Ilya said, trying to sound calm. "We're almost there." Liam was coughing with a deep, raspy sound that tore at the soul when they finally arrived at the hospital. Elias pulled the SUV right up to the emergency room entrance, not worrying about the no parking zone. He quickly got out and opened the back door, helping Sophia down with the child. They practically ran into the emergency room, where the fluorescent lights shone with dazzling intensity. "I need help. It's a child. He has a high fever and can't breathe well," Goliath shouted toward the reception counter. A nurse immediately approached, assessing the situation with professional eyes. She saw little Liam gasping for breath in his mother's arms and reacted instantly. "Bring him back here quickly," she ordered, pointing toward the doors leading to the treatment area. Sophia followed the nurse while Elias ran behind them, refusing to stay in the waiting room. They took them to an examination room, where a young doctor appeared in less than 2 minutes. "Put the child here," he indicated, pointing to a pediatric gurney. Sophia laid Liam down with trembling hands. The doctor immediately began to examine him, listening to his lungs with the stethoscope, checking his throat, taking his temperature 4 degrees fever. He announced seriously, "And he has significant wheezing in both lungs." "How long has he been like this?" Sophia tried to answer between sobs since yesterday afternoon he started coughing, but tonight it got worse, much worse. The doctor nodded while making quick notes. "I'm going to order a chest x-ray and urgent blood tests based on the symptoms. I suspect it's the beginning of pneumonia." The word struck Sophia like a hammer. "Pneumonia. My God, no." Her legs gave way and Elias immediately held her, wrapping his arms around her. "It's okay, the doctor knows what to do," he murmured in her ear. Although he himself felt fear run down his spine, the doctor continued in a professional, that understanding tone. "We need to admit him tonight to administer intravenous antibiotics and oxygen. He's also dehydrated, so we'll start an IV." Sophia nodded, unable to speak, clinging to Elias's hand as if it were the only thing keeping her standing in that moment of nightmare. An hour later, Liam was settled in a room in the pediatric area. We had placed an IV in his small arm, an oximeter on his finger, and a nasal cannula that supplied oxygen. The child had stopped crying, exhausted by the fever and the effort to breathe, and now slept restlessly among the hospital's white sheets. Sophia was sitting in a chair next to the bed, holding Liam's free hand without letting go for a second. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying so much. Elias was standing near the window looking at the city lights outside, but his mind was completely focused on that room. He turned and observed Sophia, so fragile and strong at the same time, watching over her son's sleep. "You, my friend, have just witnessed the unbelievable beginning of a life-changing love story." What Elias felt for Sophia and little Liam went far beyond the financial transaction. Will he risk everything? his comfort, his reputation, to embrace a future he thought was impossible. You need to find out what happens next. Don't miss the powerful continuation of this incredible tale of destiny, love, and second chances. Stay tuned for the next part. Until then, remember, one simple act of kindness can truly change the world. If this story resonated with you, smash that subscribe button to follow the rest of their journey.